Hi there, I'm Bakakuma. I'm a weird guy. To be precise, I'm a weird guy who tested almost 30 games on Steam Deck. And to be even more precise, I tested how well Raytracing performs on Steam Deck. Yep, Raytracing. Throw out your PS5, trash your Xbox Series X, here comes the Steam Deck. And you might be surprised by how well it performs in some scenarios. The Steam Deck actually did not support Raytracing on most titles until the launch of the Steam Deck OLED, which came with a system update that enabled DirectX 12 Raytracing in most games, even on the base Steam Deck. That's a lot of Steam Deck. Anyways, you might think that RT is going to destroy the frame rate in most games, and you might be right, but some games still play surprisingly well, especially on the smaller screen. Also, for this video I downloaded literally 1.4 terabytes of games, and it wouldn't have been possible without the Steam Deck update in November that allowed auto-mounting of external USB storage. Yep, that wasn't there before. You had to manually mount external USB devices like hard drives and USB sticks. Anyway, to make the performance differences a bit more clear, I split things up into categories. Right now we have 4 ray tracing effects in games. Raytraced Reflections, which most of you know from games like Spider-Man. Then there's Raytraced Shadows, which was used in Cyberpunk on consoles. Raytraced Ambient Occlusion, which realistically draws shadows for objects that are close to each other. And the biggest game changer, Raytraced Global Illumination, which measures how light bounces off surfaces to give the scene more color and more depth. Every effect comes with its own performance hit, and only the avatar can master all 4 ray tracing effects. Also, some effects don't hit the performance as much as the others. This won't be a Digital Foundry style performance comparison though, so don't expect too much please. Also, because some games feature multiple effects, they're gonna appear multiple times, like Far Cry 6 has RT Shadows and RT Reflections for example. So, let's start with games with Raytraced Reflections. First game I tried was Bright Memory Infinite, a game developed by a single Chinese developer, which combines first-person sword action with fast-paced shooting. Quite interesting and worth the few bucks it costs. Before enabling RT, we should enable FSR, as that basically gives us free performance without a big loss in image quality, at least in most scenarios. I allowed the settings to be as low as possible without sacrificing too much, so shadows should be at least turned on. Also, don't at me, but motion blur helps smoothing out the lower frame rate. So finally I enabled RT, started the game, and it crashed my Steam Deck. What a good start. I tried changing to Proton Experimental and turning off the ray tracing, just to see if the game passes the first cutscene, and it crashed. Curses. Alright, let's try again, and hey, it seems to work now. Without RT, that is. So let's quickly beat the tutorial and... that looks weird. It seems like the game doesn't create motion vectors for this surface, so the FSR gets completely confused here. Anyways, time to finally enable ray tracing, and it works. We still have 30 FPS. The Steam Deck survived, but we are getting a lot of drops under 30 FPS, and it's not really that much fun, especially because the difference in quality isn't that big in this game. I think it's more noticeable at higher RT quality settings. Nonetheless, I tried increasing the RT quality and it drops way below 20 FPS now. Not much fun, is it? The game itself is awesome and really reminds me of a Titanfall in terms of gunplay, but alas, I wouldn't recommend turning on RT beyond academic purposes. Let's move on. Do you know Control? You know, the game that everyone talks about when mentioning ray tracing? The game Alex Battaglia from Digital Foundry most likely never completed because the Corridor of Doom is just too sexy. I feel you. As Richard Ledbetter, or as I'd like to call him, The Richer, already explained in his Steam Deck OLED review, this game got RT on Steam Deck now. I don't remember what he said though, so let's have a look ourselves. To keep it topical, we're looking at the RT reflections first. So without RT and at native resolution, the game runs at about 30 to 35 FPS. Could be better, so let's look at the graphics settings. Right now the game has 4 times MSAA enabled, even though the game has TAA anti-aliasing by default. So that's already a huge performance waste. Let's set everything to as low as reasonably possible and turn on RT. And yeah, that's not really that fluid. Below 20 FPS most of the times, and we didn't even enable transparency RT. Let's lower the resolution to 1/4 of the Steam Deck resolution. While this looks awful on a YouTube video, it looks just fine when playing on the Steam Deck. That's a nice performance bump, but it has some hiccups. Overall it's pretty smooth though, so let's try increasing the resolution. 540p? Too much for the poor AMD APU. The game commonly drops below 30 FPS. Enabling transparent reflections lowers it by another 10%, but finally gives us the reflections on all the glass doors. So if you want to enjoy control with RT on Steam Deck, you'll have to live with 630 by 400, which doesn't look as bad as you imagine it, but it's still a noticeable hit. Not worth it in my opinion, but I promise we'll see games that are worth it. Just hang on. Crysis Remastered. There we go. Okay, this might be cheating, because this game also supported Raytracing on PS4 Pro and Xbox One X. You know, the consoles that did not have Raytracing units on their GPU, so of course this game is well optimized. But still, Steam Deck can run Crysis. Alright, let's step back first. Crysis Remastered features Raytraced Reflections. I thought it also features Raytraced Shadows at first because the shadows have this penumbra effect, where they blur more and more the higher the distance to the object that's casting the shadow. This can be achieved without Raytracing, as we can see here, and it can easily fool people, including me, to think that it's RT, but in this case it's not. Just the geniuses at Crytek and Saber Interactive doing their job. Anyways, to enable RT you need to have shading set to high at least. Also, fight me, you can set post-processing to high to enable CryEngine's motion blur, which is so convincing that when I first played the game I thought it was running at 60 FPS while it was actually running at 40. That's what good motion blur can do. That's why people should experiment with it instead of instantly writing it off. So I set everything to low, shading and post-processing to high, enabled RT in performance mode and turned on motion blur, and it was still running at 40 to 50 FPS. That's insane. If you want to, you can limit your frame rate to 30 and have a 100% stable experience right there. But that would be boring, wouldn't it? Crysis Remastered has native TAA support, and TAA works very well with Steam Deck's FSR1 upscaling. So if we set the game to 960 by 600, we are super close to 60 FPS. We could easily limit to 50 and be done with it. Ladies, gentlemen and NBs, we have it right here. RT running with almost 60 FPS on Steam Deck, as crazy as it sounds. But that's not the end. Let's look at Crysis 2 Remastered. For comparison reasons or something like that, I first ran the game at native resolution, medium settings, no RT. Ugh, boring, but it gives us a nice 50 to 60 FPS with some drops in this cutscene due to heavy usage of alpha effects. We can see that the game uses, like most games, cube maps by default, but what happens when we turn on RT? We are still left with 40 to 50 FPS. The performance RT mode displays all the environment at a lower resolution, but for some reason doesn't show our character. It does show dynamic objects, like the cones we can throw around, so it's definitely a bit weird, but I assume the magicians at Crytek and Saber had their reasons. Setting RT to high finally gives us a look at our nanosuit with its red glowing visor. Also shadows within RT reflections, and almost stable 30 FPS with only slight dips below. For academic reasons, let's also have a look at very high RT, and yeah, okay, it looks nice, but it's not worth it beyond looking at how nice the game can look. Let's go back to performance RT and lower the resolution to 960 by 600. As we said before, if a game uses TAA, its clean edges are always perfect for Steam Deck's FSR1 upscaling, and same here. Upscaling from 600p lets us enjoy almost perfect 60 FPS in one of my favorite games ever. Yep, Crysis 2 is better than Crysis 1. Fight me, folks! Also, yes, the performance might still vary depending on the scenes, and I still got drops to 40 FPS in later areas, but still, if this isn't mighty impressive, what is? Crysis 3 is. Well, it was. Crysis 3 Remastered though. Damn, that's impressive. So impressive that even without RT it doesn't run at 60 FPS on Steam Deck. Or so I thought at least. My Steam Deck was still downloading games, and if you're in a CPU limited scenario, downloading games and decompressing the download actually gives you FPS drops. This is what we see here. After stopping the download, Crysis 3 Remastered ran with almost perfect 60 FPS. So, it's time to kill a guy, mess it up, turn invisible and finally enable the RT reflections. And we are still at 40 to 50 FPS at native resolution. As in Crysis 2, your character model only appears in reflections once you set them to high or above. That, though, drops our frame rate below 30 FPS, which we do not like. Let's try running very high RT at 576p, because why not? It's above 30 FPS at least. Setting RT to performance gives us a way nicer 40 to 50 FPS, which can easily lock to 40. Not as fluid as Crysis 2, but still damn impressive if you ask me. And I'm fairly easy to impress, so I guess it doesn't count. Anyways, let's look at Cyberpunk. Yep, Cyberpunk blew my mind. It's not as good as this might make you think, but it's still damn impressive. For starters, I set the game to Steam Deck settings and changed the FOV to maximum. That already gives us a pretty damn perfect 30 FPS. PS4 players no need to be jealous about this portable system that outperforms the PS4. This isn't a contest. I found this nice diner that has a nice reflective surface in front of it, so let's set FSR 2.1 to performance and turn on the RT. Only turning on RT doesn't actually change anything, you have to toggle one of the effects. Doing that for the reflections gives us a nice 15 FPS. Which sounds terrible, and really it is, but it's also damn impressive. It also broke the asset streaming, as I wanted to pick one of my favorite bikes with a reflective windshield to showcase the reflections, but yeah, nice and all, not really playable. But Cyberpunk has different RT effects, so don't miss it later in the video. Let's have a look at Chorus, made by Fish Labs, my old employer actually. This is a space dogfighting game that flew mostly under everyone's radar, pun intended. I can't say that I'm a huge fanboy for this game since I played this before I worked at Fish Labs, so it's totally cool that they tell you to get this game, play it, leave a nice Steam review and stop complaining about the cockpit mode. It wouldn't fit the game anyways, you literally drift and teleport through space, how much do you hate not throwing up? Anyways, Chorus already runs at a pretty much perfect 60 FPS without RT and it looks stunning. The game doesn't have FSR upscaling, but it does feature Intel's XeSS, which doesn't look too bad. Enabling XeSS at performance mode should give us enough headroom to turn on Raytracing. And yeah, the game does have RT reflections, but they're sadly barely noticeable. If you don't have any side-by-side comparison, maybe it's a lot more noticeable on a bigger screen, but here it's really not much of a game changer. If you still like the effect, the game runs at a stable 30 to 40 FPS with RT and XeSS enabled, and given that it runs at 800p 60 without XeSS, I'm sure you Steam Deck dock users should be able to play this game at 1080p 60 with XeSS. I really love this game, so please give this a try. If you ever played Galaxy on Fire, this is the new Galaxy on Fire, made by the same studio, but leveled up in every way possible. Get Corvin, everyone. Doom Eternal. Yeah, Doom Eternal got an RT patch later down the line. Doom Eternal also has an option for dynamic resolution, which you can use to aim for 60 FPS. Do I need to say more? The game runs at 50 to 60 FPS and enabling RT finally allows you to see this beautiful Doomicron skin. Yes, Doomicron, I love this game. Here's more gameplay because I was too lazy to write more script to say that it runs really well. It does run really well. Speaking of running well, who of you would think of Far Cry 6 when it comes to running well on Steam Deck? And who of you would think that the ray tracing in Far Cry 6 runs well on Steam Deck? I certainly was shocked because, in a miracle twist, Ubisoft actually produced one of the most polished RT experiences on Steam Deck. Just like in Doom, all you need to do is set the dynamic resolution to, in this case, 30 FPS and you're good to go. It's honestly incredible, but it makes sense since this is an AMD-sponsored game, and AMD GPUs have less powerful ray tracing capabilities, so by optimizing for AMD GPUs, Ubisoft automatically optimized for the Steam Deck GPU. Awesome and honestly incredible. Look at my crocodile hat. Ghost Runner 1, the game that was free on Epic Games and is enjoyed by everyone who didn't get Ghost Runner 2 yet. Spoiler, this one is a I'd say Ghost Runner requires at least 40 FPS and good image quality to be enjoyed, but with RT you have to pick. Do you want RT and 40 FPS? Do you want RT and good image quality? Or do you want good image quality and 40 FPS? Yeah, not recommended. I wonder if Ghost Runner 2 performs better, but I don't have it yet. Sorry. Gotham Knights. Digital Foundry claimed, tested and verified that the game doesn't run that optimally on Steam Deck, but it has Raytraced Reflections and it's in my Steam library, therefore it has to be in this video. The performance is actually not too bad, as long as you're just running around and not using a vehicle. Also, the game has way too many upscaling options, which is never a bad thing. Using upscaling and enabling RT reflections actually gives us pretty good performance. I did not expect that. Until you move your character, that is. Moving around the world instantly results in stuttering, which is sad but not unexpected. Also, the game crashed my Steam Deck. Hooray! Hitman World of Assassination. Right after starting it for the first time, Agent 47 assassinated my Steam Deck. All it took was a reboot though, and we were back in action. The game runs at what seems to be a locked 60 FPS without RT, which is honestly amazing. Also, especially the Hitman 2 and 3 levels come with IO Interactive's own solution to handling reflections. Just setting up a goddamn virtual camera that renders everything it sees onto a texture. This is an easy solution for specific, optimized scenarios, like outside of the tower in Hitman 3's first level on top of the world. But it's not a general solution like Raytracing. That's exactly why enabling Raytracing results in, wait for it, 15 FPS. And I can't lower the resolution as the game requires 720p at least. If you have an Nvidia GPU on desktop, the game at least offers DLSS, but no FSR for Steam Deck plebs. Sad. Comparing RT with Hitman's own reflections directly shows the increase in clarity and detail though. Plus RT can be used anywhere, while the render to texture feature works only on flat surfaces and nothing that's even slightly curved. Sad, but hey, this is a learning experience. Let's look at LEGO Builder's Journey. If you haven't heard of it, I think it started as an Apple exclusive game that later came to all platforms, and for some reason on PC they decided to go all in and basically make this game look almost photoreal. It's just mind-blowing how good this game looks with all the little scratches and details that you expect from looking at a Lego brick. Even without RT it's insane, but with RT it's incredible. On Steam Deck we can enable Raytraced Reflections just fine. All we need to do is enable FSR upscaling and limit the frame rate to 30. As you can see from the settings menu though, LEGO Builder's Journey will appear in this video at a later point again, so don't miss it. Now it's time for a trio of Marvel games. It will be a short section sadly, but interesting nonetheless. First, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. No matter how low I set everything, the game never performs at a reasonable frame rate sadly. I'm currently at a place in the game where there's not many reflective surfaces, but even here the performance tanks hard. Without RT it runs surprisingly well though. Next up, Marvel's Midnight Suns. This one is gonna be short because RT is just grayed out in Steam Deck. Even when changing Proton to Proton Experimental, it doesn't allow me to enable RT. Very sad. I hope the developers reconsider this, since future Steam Deck models might have the power to play this game with RT enabled. Let's move on to the Marvel Spider-Man games, and I'm sad to report that both games simply crash the second you enable RT. I actually needed to hit delete Proton files for the game to boot up again. Since Valve doesn't want games to have launchers on Steam Deck, or rather want them to feature button controls, most developers simply skip the launcher step, so I couldn't get the game to run without going to the Steam Deck developer options. I wish there was still an option on startup to start the launcher, but right now that's sadly not an option. For some reason I almost forgot to include this game, but damn, one of my favorite shooters ever. Wolfenstein Youngblood was one of the first games with Raytraced Reflections. It runs on the same engine as Doom Eternal, but it's slightly older, so I expected it to run even better. But the game straight up didn't offer me RT options. Without RT, it runs at a flawless 60 FPS though, and it looks stunning. Highly recommended if you like the Wolfenstein universe mixed with some Crysis 2 style weapon adjustments, plus Dishonored style exploration. Also, it has a Metacritic of 69, which in my books is nice. From one of my favorite games ever to one of my favorite games last year. Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I loved every second of this game. Fair, it crashed a lot on PC, but the gameplay was so good I completely forgave everything just to be able to play more. It's incredible what Respawn did there. Sadly, the game didn't launch at all on my Steam Deck. It used to work, but even when it used to work, it was below 30 FPS. I saw some videos, to be precise, from GamingOnLinux that showed the introduction area running at 30, but I was on Kobo and it never even reached the 30, even with FSR Ultra Performance just for funsies. Don't expect to be able to run it with RT, sorry. Now comes the last RT reflection game in my list and in my Steam library. A neat little indie game called Severed Steel. It's all about jumping around, firing guns and throwing empty guns at your enemies. Because our main character lost one arm, we can't reload. In return, we can fire an energy beam that melts walls and enemies. Such a neat game. Sadly, with RT enabled, it barely hits 30 FPS, and in this game you really want the performance. Even without RT, I highly recommend this game though. Whoa, those were all the Raytraced Reflection titles. I bet you didn't see Far Cry 6 coming, or Crysis running at 60 FPS. The Steam Deck is quite a magical little device, and it only shows how much thought AMD and Valve put into this machine, and how good the optimization in some games is. Not all RT is rendered the same way, and some developers found ways to optimize the ray count in ray tracing titles. I can't wait to see more. Now let's have a look at RT Shadows. While this effect is a lot less noticeable, it usually also has a lower performance impact in most games I tested on my desktop. Let's see how well it works on Steam Deck. Let's start with control. This time we're gonna look at two options. Raytraced indirect diffuse lighting, which technically sounds more like global illumination, but hey, and Raytraced contact shadows. Turning both on allows us to still run the game at above 30 FPS, but the difference in quality isn't that noticeable. The game has a lot of really strong bake lighting and no time of day changes or anything like that, so it makes sense that the RT option doesn't change that much visibly, but hey, it runs on Steam Deck. So, now that we know what to expect from Raytraced Shadows, let's look at Cyberpunk 2077 again. Cyberpunk has two options as well, one for local lights like neon signs or light bulbs on buildings, and another one for Raytraced sun shadows, which expectedly only work at daytime. Turning on both settings almost allows us to still achieve 30 FPS, but alas, it didn't quite reach it, and as you already noticed, it still doesn't look as noticeable unless directly compared, especially on the smaller screen. Bummer. Let's look at the next game. Deathloop, one of my favorite games made by one of my favorite developers, Arcane, the masterminds behind the Dishonored games and the aforementioned Wolfenstein Youngblood. While Deathloop used to just work, it now gives me an APU unsupported message on startup, even without RT enabled. I had to manually go to the Steam Deck overlay, select the APU warning and hit the button to close that window. Weird. And while writing the script, Valve published Proton 9 Beta 14, which fixed this issue. The joy of working on Steam Deck videos for way too long. Also, and this issue has been there since release, if you use the Steam Deck's own frame rate limiter, the game's loading screens won't stop. I don't know why, and sadly the in-game framerate limiter doesn't allow limiting to 40 FPS, so you have to live with the in-game limited 30 or manually turn on and off Steam Deck's own FPS limiter all the time. Bummer, but let's talk about the RT. To enable RT you have to restart the game, and I did not read that and spent way too much time comparing video footage. Anyways, one restart later and yeah, the game just crashes my Steam Deck with RT enabled. I hope either Valve or Arcane fix this one day, since future Steam Deck revisions might allow this game to run smoothly with RT enabled. Let's look again at our miraculous wonder child Far Cry 6. This game also has an option for Raytraced Shadows, and given that RT Reflections already ran at a solid 30 and that RT Shadows use up less resources in most cases, do I really need to explain it? It just works. In some scenes you can immediately see a difference in how shadows are casted. For example in this area, where you can see objects of varying distance throwing shadows with varying levels of blur, just like it should be. For funsies, let's also enable RT Reflections and see this game in its full Raytrace glory on Steam Deck, and holy damn shit, it just works! To be fair, I also enabled VRS here. VRS stands for Variable Rate Shading and allows the game to judge which areas are less detailed and therefore need a lower resolution. In this case, the game just renders the edges of the screen with a lower resolution than the center. It's quite brilliant and an easy performance save, especially on a smaller screen. It's just insane how well Far Cry 6 works on Steam Deck, and I gotta say I never really expected this. Speaking of expectations, Hitman 3. We already looked at the reflections and Steam Deck sadly could not handle them, so let's look at the shadows now. Shadows should be easier to render, and we can see that right here in action. It's way closer to 30 FPS, but it still doesn't reach it. And we sadly cannot lower the resolution to mitigate the slight gap in performance. If Hitman had FSR, this would 100% be a perfectly playable RT title on Steam Deck, but alas, it doesn't run with RT right now. Time for some more positive news. LEGO Builder's Journey is still awesome, and when activating RT Shadows, it still runs flawlessly. Awesome. Everything is awesome. Here you go, feel free to sing this for the rest of the video. We're almost done with the Raytraced Shadows, so let's talk about the last game on this list. Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I had so high expectations for this title. The Tomb Raider games are really well optimized for PC, thanks to Team Nixxes, who are so good PlayStation bought them to exclusively bring PlayStation games to PC now. When first starting Shadow of the Tomb Raider, I was wondering why there were no RT options at all. Turns out Feral Interactive made a native Linux port for this game and straight up didn't include ray tracing. That's easy to fix though, you just need to force Steam to use a Proton version for this game. That will download the Windows files. Dungeon Rings downloaded the new files, but it crashes on startup now. It doesn't go past the developer intros. Sad. I was 100% sure this would be another flawless 30 FPS title, but sadly that's not the case. This might be fixed with future Proton versions, but as of right now it did not work for me. Sad. Alright, technically we're halfway done in terms of categories, but you're a smart person, you can see the runtime of this video. We're almost done, okay? Let's go to Raytraced Ambient Occlusion. The only game I had with RTIO was, wait for it, LEGO Builder's Journey, and it runs just fine. It's not that much of a game changer though, so I don't recommend using it. This won't be the last time we hear about LEGO Builder's Journey, by the way, and I'm sorry for that. But yeah, that's it. New category! Raytraced Global Illumination. Whoa, what does that even mean? Global illumination is the math behind the fact that every surface is reflective. Every surface reflects its own color onto the world. Imagine a white ball in a colorful room. Well, you don't have to imagine it, I have it right here. The walls are all colorful and they reflect the incoming light. They scatter it throughout the room and some light rays hit the ball in the middle, making it appear like it's glowing red, green and blue. This is a very simple scene, but in games RTGI can cost massive amounts of performance. Since every surface needs to be calculated with RT, and lights need to bounce at least twice to make it look good. So, let's look at said games. First up, Cyberpunk again. Knowing that the other options almost ran well but didn't quite hit our 30 FPS target, we can already assume that enabling RT lighting won't give us satisfying levels of performance. But it's still worth looking at. As we can see, enabling the option basically gives us 10 to 15 FPS. It's not good, it's bad, but it's also crazy. This is a handheld gaming device, running a game with Raytraced GI at multiple FPS. It sounds stupid, but let's get even more stupid. Let's enable the full path tracing. Yep, that's right, this game allows us to toggle on full path tracing on Steam Deck. Path tracing means that every bit of lighting, be it reflections, global illumination, ambient occlusion, they're all rendered with ray tracing instead of old approaches. It's basically almost what you would get if you use Blender and hit render on the cycles renderer. If you ever did that, you'll know that rendering a fully path traced frame can take quite a couple seconds or even minutes, actually even hours in more complex scenes. So it's a straight up miracle that the Steam Deck doesn't just burst into flames, but instead gives us multiple frames per second still. Imagine the next generation of Steam Deck being able to play this with 30 FPS on the go. Crazy. Also crazy, the amount of times I said Lego Builder's Journey so far. The game also has RTGI support, and toggling it on shows us more realistic surfaces, especially in areas that were in shadow before. Every surface gets tweaked to be more realistic, but alas, it doesn't run well on Steam Deck. Stick with RT Reflections if you want to play this game with RT enabled. One of the RT games of all time is Metro Exodus. On PC it allows us to use Raytraced Shadows, Reflections and GI. On Steam Deck, however, the game doesn't allow us to toggle the ray tracing options at all. Sad. However, and technically this counts as a new game, Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition exists, and that game is a fully ray-traced port of the main game. The developers went through the game and removed every artificial light source that was needed to create fake bounce light, since you don't need them with RT enabled. RTGI automatically gives you realistic bounce lighting, so knowing that this game uses the full suite of ray tracing on default, what do you expect on Steam Deck? Well, setting the internal shading resolution to 0.4x, VRS to 4x actually allows us to experience just another miracle. Using these settings, Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition runs with full ray tracing on Steam Deck at 30 FPS. This is crazy and it doesn't look that bad, especially on the smaller screen. Just imagine what this could look like on the Steam Deck OLED's pure black screen with HDR enabled. This is crazy. Just straight up mind-blowing. It's not perfect, but it's still crazy. Once again, imagine what a future Steam Deck revision would do to this game. Gosh damn. Alright, from one mind-blowing game to a true letdown. Portal with RTX, made with RTX Remix by Nvidia. I had hopes for this game, but sadly it just gives us the normal Portal 1 UI with some weird glitches. No warnings, just glitches. Sad. I had hopes for one simple reason. Quake 2 with RTX. Yep, it works. It's crazy. It works. Fully path-traced Quake 2 running on Steam Deck. This is the last title in today's video and goddamn, it's such a surprise. This version is also made by Nvidia, so it's a huge win that it runs on Steam Deck. Yes, it doesn't look that good, but the technology on display is quite insane. All you need to do to get it to run is enable dynamic resolution, set it to aim for 30 FPS and set the other settings like I did on screen. Before recording this game I actually got even higher performance, but I couldn't replicate it while capturing. But yeah, this is amazing. Quake 2 fully path traced, running in double digits on Steam Deck. Oof. So, those were the titles I had in my Steam, Epic or Ubi Connect library. So, of course this is far from complete, but it should be the longest video about this topic on YouTube, as of right now, so there we go I guess. If you have any games with RT in your library, be sure to try them on Steam Deck. There's a list on PC Gaming Wiki with every RT game, and that's also what I used for this video. You can find a link for that in the description. Feel free to share your discoveries in the comments. If you want to see more weird Steam Deck content, feel free to leave a sub, as I'll 100% do more Steam Deck content. If you're here because you like handheld games, you're in luck, because I also do videos about Switch. And if you just simp for everything with a battery, well, I also plan to do videos about my Quest 3. And last one I promise, if you want to see more gaming content, feel free to follow me on Twitch, where I regularly stream games running on Steam Deck, Switch or Quest 3. And And I have a Discord. Links are in the description. Thank you so much for watching. This video took way too long to produce, but I'm glad it's finally done. Also, this might be important to some of you, this video was 100% done without the use of AI. And so will my other videos. If you care for that as much as I do, I hope I see you again. Until then, goodbye.